This is Phil Conrad, instructor for Fall 20 Computer Science 156 at UC Santa Barbara. In this video, I'm going to show you the progress on a particular issue on the Mapache-Search project. It's issue number 11, and the issue, you can see we've already met a couple of the acceptance criteria. We've done a couple of the items in the front end, but we now need to do some work on the back end. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this video. We're on staff channel list, and the next steps are to work on the back end routes. So we left ourselves some notes here on the issue. Always a good idea if you're working on an issue and it takes more than one session to leave yourself and the team some notes. Leaving these notes is helpful to yourself because you forget from day to day. You if you're in this class, you have other responsibilities, other courses. I, as the instructor of this class, have other classes, other responsibilities. So I have to divide my time between this and other things. Even if you were working a full-time job, though, you often have multiple responsibilities. You are working on coding, but then there are also team meetings and company meetings, and just the fact that at the end of one work day, you're going to go home and do other things. Well, I guess during the pandemic, you don't really go home, you are home, but you switch from work mode to other activities. So leaving yourself some notes on the issue is a good practice. So I see here that the next step is to work on the back-end routes. And the first step is to add a channel repository class that corresponds to the channels collection in the MongoDB database. So let's do that. We've got VS Code opened up here, and we're going to be working in the back end. So I'm going to close up the whole JavaScript directory and open up the source directory, open up main, Java. And the place that we want to be working this morning is in controllers. And we have a Slack user controller, but what we're going to need is a channels controller. So what is this doing for us, this channels controller? Well, if I bring up the app, which I have running here on localhost, at least I thought I did, let's take a look. Okay, so this app is, oh, right, not localhost 3000 in this case, but localhost 8080. There we go. All right, so here's the Mapache Search app. I'm logged in, and if I go to list channels, I see that right now what I have is fake channel data. So this fake data is coming. I guess I will open up the front end again just briefly. It's coming from in the front end under source main pages channel list. We have these fake channels right here. And what we want to do is replace that with data we get from the back end. And that's going to involve, at this point in the code, instead of fake data as below, fetch some real data from the back end, from a route called, and let's see if we have in the ticket an idea of what that route is going to be called. Yes, it's going to be called API Members Channels. So we'll go ahead and put that here. API Members Channels. That's the route that we need to create. So we are going to, now actually I started by going to the controllers. That's not where I should have started. I should have started with the channels repository, but yeah, since we're there, channels controller, the idea is that every route in the back end is an API endpoint where you can send a message from the front end and then get back data in JSON format. And that is what a REST controller, for example, the Slack user controller, is called a REST controller. That's what a REST controller in Spring does. Each of the methods down here that's annotated with something like get mapping, this is a route, Slack users, and it's under API Slack users, and it will return a list of the Slack users. We're going to make another, in fact, we can go ahead and actually, we'll make the controller first. I think that actually makes sense because we can return fake data through the controller for now until we're ready to return real data. So let's go ahead and make a new file, and we will call this channel, or let's call it Slack channels. We'll just call it channels controller. I was debating whether to make it consistent with Slack user, but I realized that the reason that we have a Slack user is to distinguish that from a user of this app, someone who has logged into this app, who may or may not correspond to a Slack user. All right, so we've got a channels controller now, and we want to turn that into something that looks like a controller. So what I'm going to do is actually just paste in the code for the Slack user controller, change this to channels controller, and then I'm going to just go through the code here. We will need a logger, but every time you have a logger, you have to specify the name of the class. So this is channels controller, not what was said there before. And the reason that this is underlined like this is that this is currently an unused variable, but we'll make use of it. Slack user repository. I'm not going to need that, but I will need a channels repository. Now we haven't defined the channels repository yet. That should be lowercase since that's a variable. Excuse me. So for the time being, I will comment this out. Auth controller advice, I think we might need that, we might not. Let's comment it out for now. And by the way, before we commit, we will eliminate commented out code. It's fine to have commented out code while you're working on some code, but when you check that code in, commented out code should be gone at that point. You either need it or you don't. If you are checking in commented out code, there should be a very, very good reason for it. That's really an exception, an exceptional case. So in general, we don't check in commented out code. Okay, so let's see. Get unauthorized response. I think we'll keep that because we may need that if someone makes a request for the channel information and they're not authorized. We want to be able to tell them that. Okay, so here's our get mapping, and we're going to put this at /members/ actually, I think we want to put the members here because I think all of the information in this controller is going to be under members. So API members, and then the get mapping here will be for channels. So let me just look at the ticket again. API members channels. The final route consists of, you can put this request mapping at the top of your class, and then this is prepended to every route. So the final route will be API members channels. In here, this is not going to, the name of the method is sort of immaterial, but it's good that it describes what this is doing. So we could actually call this get channels, since it is in fact a get route for the channels method. The request header authorization is because we only want this route to be available to users that have logged in and users that have the member status in the repo. That is, they are users that are in the list of Slack users for this Slack workspace. And we've already established that code. We have a get is member function that's already been written. So we do need the auth controller advice. So we'll go ahead and bring that back. This is basically gives controller classes advice on authorization. That's what auth controller advice is doing in this case. We are, for the time being, going to comment out this because we don't yet have the repository that has the channels in it. We're just going to create some fake data instead. Let's see, auth controller advice. Instead, we want member. We are going to basically check to see if the user is a member. This authorization string is essentially the information that comes with the request that tells us who is this user. and it is a JWT token, I believe, is the form that takes. Um, Sometimes pronounced JOT, JWT. So that is a JWT token, and that's pronounced JOT token. And that is the data structure that holds the information about the logged in user. And from that, we can determine the user's email and then determine whether or not they are in the table of users. I'm not going to go over that code right now. That is code that's already been committed to this repo. Okay, so we do need a body, and we can get that body by basically just saying something like, let's see. Actually, that would be a legitimate body. Actually, I think the form our body is eventually going to take is going to be an array. So let's do string body equals, and then that'll be a empty set of braces, just so that we can test out this route. So we will, let's see, I'm realizing that since this is a non-public route, we can't really test it, or can we? Think about this a minute. I think we might be able to. Let's see what happens if we try just compiling this code. So I'm going to try coming over here. And since this is only the back end that we're worried about at the moment, I'm going to rerun this, and to save a little time, I'm going to do skip npm. That basically says, I don't even care about the front end. Now I'm realizing that's not going to work because we won't have a way to log in if the front end is not running. However, it might work because the browser just might remember that I already have a logged in session. We'll give it a try. This may not work, but it's worth a try. So we're going to run this and then see what happens if we hit that back-end route. So it'll take just a minute to come up, and are we up yet? Not quite. Getting there. Right now it's trying to connect to the MongoDB database, get everything set up. Okay, initialization, almost there. This is one thing about Java backends. They take a long time to come up because a lot of the processing is done up front. They're fast once they're up, but getting started can take a while. And it's not, I think it's not, is it up? I'm looking to see. What I'm looking for is that listening on port 8080. Let's see if it's up. So if I come over here and go to API/members/channels, okay, full authentication is required to access this resource, unauthorized. And because I didn't bring up the front end, I will not be able to log in again. But we can see that at least the route is there. I think that if I were to put in just, foobar, oh, interesting. Maybe the front end is up. Let's see. If I log out and then log back in, perhaps it still has the old copy of the front end, just didn't rebuild it. That would be fine. So now, if I go to API members channels, now full authentication is required. So I think that's not going to work for us as a test. We probably are going to have to test this from the front end. It's also possible that this is not working properly. But let's go ahead and build the repository and the entity so we can test it properly instead of with the fake data. So let's go and create. What this is going to eventually be is an iterable of channels, and it will be a channel repository. And we will do a find all on the channel repository. So the channel repository corresponds to the MongoDB database. And let's bring up that database so we can see what we're working with. So I'm going to log into MongoDB. sign in. And eventually, for the teams that are working on Mapache Search, you'll need credentials to access this database, and we will set that up for you. So I think I just clicked into the wrong browser window. Here we go. All right. So once you're logged into MongoDB, we are in this F20 staff Slack spike. Staff Slack spike. Spike is some temporary work you do while you're getting a project up and running, sort of a proof of concept. And we have a proof of concept for that database here. We will create that database properly when we launch this with the teams. But you can see under this database, we've got channels, messages, and users. It's the channels collection that we're working on right now. And this is the database. And you can see there's one record for each channel in the Slack archive. So section 6 p.m., articles react, lecture, and so forth. What we are going to do right now is create the, we first of all need to create the object that corresponds to this. So it's a good idea to get the general shape of the object. One of the things we can do is we can go over here and say copy the document. Actually, if I click, hold on, let me do cancel. I think if I copy the document, I don't know if I get it in the format I want it in. Let's see. If I come over, eventually what I'm going to be doing is under documents, I'm going to have each item in a MongoDB database. This one, for example, this one, each of these is called a document in a collection. So one item in a collection is called a document. And what I think I did just now is to copy that, and hopefully it comes in JSON format, because what I'd like to do is do a new file here and say channel.java, and then I'd like to paste in here at the bottom as a comment. I don't know what that's doing there. Here is example of the JSON for a channel document, and if I paste that in, okay, so that looks okay. I'd like that to be formatted properly though. So what I can do is cut that. I'm going to make a new window, and I'm going to paste that in, and I think that if I take this new window and that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Let me try this again. I think if maybe what I can do is come over here and paste this into foo.json, paste that in. So what I did there was cat greater than foo.json, and then I just did a paste. That will create the document foo.json. If I now open that up in code, and then I do Shift Option F is the keystroke on Mac to reformat. If it doesn't work for you, it might be that you have to install one of the VS Code extensions for working with JSON files. But in any case, and also Shift Option F is the way for VS Code. On the course website, if you look under Topics and then under VS Code, down here at the bottom, there it is, VS Code, you will see for formatting and indenting your code, on Windows it's Shift-Alt-F, and on Linux it's Control-Shift-I. So those keystrokes may vary. In any case, what I wanted to do was get the shape of the object as JSON. So what I'm going to do is take that, now that it's formatted, cut that, and put that back into our channel.java. I'm going to paste that in, the formatted JSON, so that we have an idea of what the shape of this document looks like. Next step is to look at one of these other documents, and we will go ahead and grab, actually we don't need all of this because a lot of this we're going to be able to generate. So I'm going to grab just this code here. Um, the actual, everything except for the definition of the fields, all this other code is code that we can generate using the Sohibe code generators. So I'm just going to take this the hop part here, put it in here, and we're going to then replace document. The collection is going to be channels. This collection equals channels corresponds to, over on MongoDB, the name of my collection. So it's either channels, messages, or users. And coming back over here, the name of the class will be channel. And then what I'm going to do is look down here and see what do I have down here that I need. So I can see there's an ID for the channel. This underscore ID is actually the MongoDB ID for this channel. So we're not going to worry about that one. That one is just something that MongoDB does for us. We're going to focus on just this ID, the one that is defined in the data. We need a name, so that's good. So far we've got both of those. Let's see, the creator might be interesting. That tells us who created the channel, so we'll go ahead and get that, the creator. This created is going to be a timestamp, and yeah, we might worry about that later, but for the time being, we will leave that alone. We have is archived and is general. Let's go ahead and do those. So private, I'm going to use a capital B Boolean. Those tend to work out a little bit better with these database fields. Archived. That allows the data to be missing without creating a problem. So Boolean is general. Let's see. The members is an array, and it looks like it is an array of strings. So we can simply do for members, we can do private list string members. Let's continue. Now, topic is an object all of its own. So for that, we would have to have a separate class. So what we would need to do is make a new file here under documents, which is channel topic.java. And this is going to be just a plain old Java class. So over in channel, I can basically take this shape and do the same thing down here and say shape of a channel topic, paste that in, and I'll put up at the top here private string value, private string creator, and then last set looks like a timestamp. I'm going to leave that alone for the time being. Working with timestamps is a little tricky, so we'll just not worry about that for the time being. Now, that's the end. That's all we're going to put in this class. So this is the moment when we right-click, and down here at the bottom, you should have this menu, Java, Generator, GUI, Generate All Quick, and so forth. You get that menu from the extension, which is the Java Code Generator, Sohibe. So that one is, let's see, Java Code Generator. It's this one right here, Java Code Generators. So maybe if I do Java Code Generators, there it is. So you want to install this right here. This is a really useful tool. That is the tool that gives you the ability to right-click, go down to Java Generator GUI, and say, okay, I want a constructor. Actually, I think I can just do generate all. And when you do generate all, you get a default constructor, a constructor with fields. You get getters and setters, so get all of these. But one thing you do also get that we don't really use is these things called fluent setters. So a fluent setter is just like a regular setter, except instead of having the word set, it just has the name of the attribute. It sets that and then returns a reference to this. So the idea is that if you had a variable of type channel topic, you could do something like channel.value or sorry, channel topic dot value cute puppies dot creator Phil Conrad. And the idea is that because each of these fluent setters returns a reference to the object, you can just do dot value, dot creator, dot whatever, and just set each attribute that way. This is a handy pattern, but it requires extra unit tests, and it's not required for this to work. So we're going to stick for now with just the regular getters and setters because they're easier to test and they get the job done. So if I use the generate all, I'm going to get rid of those. One more thing is that when you use the Sahib code generator, this objects class you need an import for it. In VS Code, there's a quick fix button that will put that import in for me. But I happen to know that the import that's needed is import java.util.objects. That should resolve that issue. And that channel topic is now done. We can return to just the regular channel.java class. And we're down here to purpose. So we're going to do the same thing for purpose. We're going to make, since this is a nested object, we're going to make a channel purpose file here. So channel purpose.java. And just like in channel topic, we'll go back to channel. We'll get the shape of the JSON here. And we will paste that in at the bottom of channel topic. Nope, sorry, of channel purpose. So channel purpose JSON. And we'll paste that in. And then we will set up our fields. And it looks like they're pretty much exactly the same as a channel topic. So I can pretty much cheat by doing this. And then do the same thing I did before, which is to go to generator GUI, go to generate all, and then get rid of the fluent setters here, the ones that return the name of the class and then just are that the name is the name of the data members. And then I need that import for Java util objects. Okay, so with those two done, now I should be able to come over and say private. Let's see. These are left over from before. We were down to the list of members, and then there's a topic and a purpose. So this will be private channel purpose and private channel topic. And those two came again from, it's topic and then purpose. The order doesn't really matter, but it's a good idea to put them in the order in which they appear just to keep things neat and tidy. So I think I need a closing brace. Yes, there's a closing brace. And now again, I can do the same thing I did before. Go to the generator GUI, just say generate all, and then get rid of the fluent setters. So the fluent setters in this case start right here. We're going to keep set purpose, get rid of all of these down to there. And then as before, objects, I think this case I already had the import from basically before. I'm not using logger and logger factory yet, but it's probably a good idea for us to put a logger. Nah, maybe not. We'll just leave that out. The equals builder is something that will be useful when we go for testing this. It turns out that the equals that's generated by the Sahib code generator is a little bit tougher to test than the equals that is used in some other classes. In fact, if we just go ahead and do that now, if we look at Slack user and look down at the equals method, we will see that it differs slightly from the one generated by Sohib. So let's bring these up side by side. So here is the equals for Slack user, and Scott has recoded that to use the equals builder. And over in this, let's do this one, channel topic, and here is Slack user. So what we want to do is follow the pattern from Slack user and rewrite this equals. So the O equals this, return true, that's fine. And then the next line we're going to do this. Actually, let's just go ahead and copy all of this and paste it here. And I will re-indent. And then that way I don't need this window anymore, and the code's a little easier to read. So equals builder, we're going to need the import for that. And here is, I can just use the hint from VS Code to bring that in. Now what we have to do, the only thing we really have to do is make sure that these builder.append, that all of these are the actual variables that are a part of this particular class. So this is sort of particular to the class, and in this case our variables are simply value and creator. So we're going to append value and Slack user.value, and what's happening here is that the equals builder, its job is to check whether the two objects are equal. So we're simply going to list all of the attributes. So value and creator, we're comparing when we use equals, we use it like this. We would say something like, let's see, we were in channel topic. So we would have like channel topic CT1 equals and channel topic CT2 equals, whatever it is. And then we would be asking the question, if CT1 dot equals CT2. And the idea here is that CT1 is the this object inside of equals, and then CT2 is the object O. So everywhere I do value, it really is the same as like this dot value, and this dot create is not going to be, it was creator, I just didn't finish typing it. So, and then instead of Slack user, in this case, since this is a channel topic, this needs to be channel topic, and this should be, we'll say CT for channel topic. So this is going to be CT.value, and this is going to be CT.creator. And let's get rid of that and get rid of these here. And that is what that should look like, I believe. Oh, and this needs to also be channel topic. All right, if that didn't quite make sense, don't worry, because we're going to do that a couple more times, and by the time we're through each of those, it will make sense, I believe. The idea is the first thing we do is we check whether the other object and this object are in fact the same object. Here we're actually checking the references to the object on the heap. If it's the same reference, obviously they're equal to each other. If the other object is null, clearly it can't be equal because this object isn't null, or we would have had a null pointer exception. Or if the class of the other object is not the same as the class of this object. If we're comparing a channel topic with a toaster oven, obviously they are not equal, so we return false. Then what do? We cast this object to a channel topic. We build our equals builder. We append the value, all of the values we want to compare on the basis of, and then this builder that basically does the build of this equals and returns the correct value. It just checks: is this one equal to this one? Is this one equal to this one? It looks through each of those. So that is how that works. Now, the reason that this is preferred, I mean, what we had down here is pretty much the same code, but here what we're doing is we're doing objects.equal. on each of these different values. And that is equivalent to basically checking whether this one is equal to this one, whether this one is equal to this one. The answer is this is much easier to write tests for. If you do this, then you have to look at every possible combination of these being equal or not equal, and that turns into a lot of tests very quickly. Whereas with the equals builder, because the equals builder is already tested separately, you don't end up with as many test cases as you have to write in order to get full test coverage. Okay, so that is the equals method. And I'm going to get rid of this stuff up here. We will come back and do a couple more of these equals when we get to the stage of doing test coverage. Okay, so from there, let us go ahead and see, where are we? We've got our channel topic class, we have our channel purpose, and we have our channel class. I think we're ready to write the channel repository. So let's come back to here and open up repositories. This will be one of the easier things to do. We have a Slack user repository. We're going to copy and paste and make a channel repository.java. And I'm going to just paste in the code down here. We've got duplicate package lines, so we don't need two of those. Change this to channel repository. And what we have here left over is finding by email. And we might need at some point to find by channel. So let's go ahead and write that now. The way this works is if we look inside channel, if we want to be able to find a channel by its name, then what we will need to do here in the channel repository is say find by name, string name. In this case of the old repository, the Slack user repository, we were finding profile.email, and the reason was that in the Slack user, the email is down inside the profile object. So we have to do a get profile and then a get email. But in this case, what we're looking for is right in the top level object. It's right here, public or private string name, right here in the channel class. So down here in channel repository, we don't need profile.email. We can simply say name, and that's all we need. And so with that in place, and it's possible we don't even need this at query because this is a top level object. Doesn't hurt to have it there, so I'm going to leave it there. We do need to come over here and say this channel repository is not a repository of Slack users. It is rather a repository of channels. So that's how you set up a repository for a MongoDB collection. And then this is wavy because we have not imported it. Up here, edu usb Apache documents Slack user. The reason that's not showing up as unknown is because we have to change this as well. This query should give us a list of channels. Now that one should be unused, probably just taking VS Code a minute to realize it, but we will say Apache documents channel. And now you can see app user is no longer, and optional is no longer showing up, so we will take those out. I think everything else here is good. So with that, we are probably at the stage where we can return to our controller, and these two lines of code should now work. So what are these two lines of code? This is where, okay, and that should be an iterable of channel, not channels. Channel repository, we need to uncomment that. So an iterable on channel. Channel probably needs to be imported. So let's see if the automatic imports work. Quick fix. Import channel from edu Mapache documents. Yes. And channel repository. The quick fix on that is change to channel repository. Yes, I've got channels repository, but it should be channel repository. And then did it automatically do the import for me? It looks like it did. All right. We no longer need Slack user repository in this one. And I don't think we need admin repository. I don't, well, we might need app user. Let's see. No, I don't think we do. Now, here, that's going to be channels. So what's happening here? We're using our channel repository, which is wavy. Let's see. Yes, because that should be channel repository. We're using our channel repository find all to basically get a list of all the channels. Then this mapper.writeValue as string converts that to JSON format as a string, and we send that back as the response to our request. So at this point, we should be able to, from the front end, get this data. So let's take a look. Let's go to the front end code. And back in the front end, let's close that up. If we look at how the, I believe under admin, there is a table here. This gets all of the Slack users. And you can see that there is this code right here at the top of Slack users. These two lines, this gets a token, and then this token is used to get data from the back end, from API Slack users. So I'm going to take these two lines of code, and I'm going to go over to my page for the channel list, which is here. I'm going to put these two lines of code at the top. You can see here this const is authenticated, use auth 0. I think we're going to use this get access token silently instead from auth 0. If we need the is authenticated, we can also get that later, but we're just going to use this pattern for now. And this is going to replace the fake data. So I'm going to comment out the fake data. And we can see that we want to get the not Slack users, but channels. And we're going to get it from API members channels. There we go. And I can take this out now because we've written that code. I will leave this in case we need to swap it back in for debugging, but before I commit the code, once the code works, I will take that out. Let's see now if we're getting real channel data. So I will, first of all, we want to probably have both the front and back end working. This foo.json that I made, I no longer need, and if I do a get status, it probably shows up as an untracked file. I'm going to remove that because I don't want that cluttering up my repo here. And we will go ahead and run. Let me just make sure that I don't already have this running in another window. So that window, let me go ahead and close that so I don't end up with too many windows here. That window is in another project, so I'll close that one. That window is in another project, so I'll close that one. All right, so we now have just the one window. I am going to make a second window because it is good to have one window where you're running and another window where you can do operations. If I do pwd, that shows me our working directory. I can just do a copy and paste and then do a cd to go right to the same directory. So you can see I'm now in the correct directory. So this is the one where I can do things like a get status to check on the status of my commit. Down here I will do maven spring boot run. And that will fire up both the front and the back end together. That'll take a minute or two. So while that is working, let's just come back over here and again review what we're doing. We're in the front end at this point. We're about to build a table of all the channels that are in the Slack workspace. We are using auth0, which basically gets our authorization to be able to do this. We'll get the access token and pass that along with our request to the back end so that the back end knows who we are and whether we're authorized to access this data. If that is successful, we will get the data here in this variable channels, and then we'll pass that to the channels table. We know the channels table works as we already tested it previously with fake data. This time we'll be seeing real data, but we have an error. So let's see what we have. Yes, use SWR and fetch with token is not defined. That's simply a matter of imports. So let's go over to, let's see, for this we're in the front end code now. So let's close up some of these back ends. From Slack users, use auth0, use SWR. We need these two imports right here. Sorry, these two imports, actually all three of these, because we're using, we have use SWR here, use auth0 here, and fetch with token there. So let's grab all three of those, put them over in, let's close up all these Java files. I believe, was it this? Trying to find, it was channel list. There we go. Paste those in, and we will try this again. All right, and we'll stay with it this time, even though it's a little tedious. Make sure we see any errors that come up. So it goes through building the front end first, and when you see creating an optimized production build, you are just about at the end of the front end process and about to start the back end process. It is possible to do these in two separate windows, and that can speed up things a little bit. And yeah, maybe we should have done that, because now, okay, let's see. So we have a syntax error. Use auth0 has already been declared. Yeah, look at that. Use auth0 is already there. So we'll be a little more careful. Let's just look and see. I don't see any duplications here. I think this is probably a good point to start doing front end and back end in separate windows, because that will speed things up. So we'll do the back end first. We'll do mvn spring boot run -d skip npm. This is how you run the back end separately. And then in our other window, we will cd into the JavaScript directory, and we will do npm start. That starts up the front end. And now at this point, we will need to talk to the front end on port 3000 instead of on port 8080. The front end and back end talk to each other. Okay, here we go. So we are up. Let's just check both of our terminal windows to make sure that so here we have a few warnings about unused variables. That is fine. The back end appears to be up, so I think we can go ahead and now I've lost the browser window where the but that's okay. We'll just open another one on localhost 3000, and we are logged in. We will go to list channels, and we have a blank screen. So that suggests that we should do an inspect over here and see what's going on. We will do look at the console, and we have a bunch of errors. So let's see. Failed prop type. The prop data is marked as required in data provider, but its value is undefined. Alrighty. And then let's see. Prop data is marked as required in bootstrap table. So we have some debugging to do. Let's go back a screen, and you can see that here this is what the console looks like when we're just on the main page. But when we go to list channels, we get these errors. Oh, and this time we also got a little bit more information here. So this is helpful. This is in bootstrap table, and it's basically saying this.props.datalength is 0. So essentially it's saying we don't have the data we were looking for. So let's do this. The fact that we have front end and back end running in separate windows means that our cycle time is now a lot shorter. I can make a change like going back to the old way of getting the channels, just the hard-coded ones, and you can see that it works now. So the problem somehow is with getting this data. So first thing let's do is see if I were to leave this in, but instead of calling this channels, I call it back-end data, and then here, oops, let me fix that, and then come down here, and I simply do a console.log and say back-end data equals, that's hard to read, let's do back-end data like that, equals $JSON dot, well, let me do it just with back-end data first to show you what that looks like, and then so back-end data. Okay, and as you see, as I'm typing, it's redoing the screen, refreshing the component each time. If I were to put in a syntax error, then it would refresh the component and tell me, yeah, dude, you've got a syntax error. So you see, this is refreshing in real time. That makes it a lot faster to work than to have to rebuild the whole application each time. All right, so now that we've got this, let's see what's in our back-end data. So I'm going to refresh the page here. And we can see that back-end data is undefined. Then we see that back-end data is all of this. Got it. So here's what we ought to do. I think that we probably were getting the correct data all the time. You can see that we're getting now this list of object, object, object. That object, object, object is not such a useful way to visualize the data, but if we do JSON.stringify of our backend data, then I think we're going to see, hopefully with luck, yes, we are actually getting the honest-to-goodness data. So why were we having a problem before? Well, you can see the first couple times our data is undefined. So there's a quick fix for that. We come down here to channels, and if we write it channels or, that's a vertical bar or, empty list, then what happens is if channels is empty, it sends the channel table an empty list. But if it's not empty, it renders the channel table. If we now replace this and say data channels, and I can just eliminate that, we don't need that anymore, and if I comment this out so that we're using the real data, and wait for my component to refresh, there it is. We have the honest to goodness, this is the real channel list with the real data, and as you can see, I've got the ID and I've got the name of each of the channels, so I think we are in good shape here. Now, one thing I'm curious about, is this ID, is this the channel ID or is it the Slack ID? And one way to know that would be for us to go and look at the MongoDB database. Yeah, see this ID, object ID F5FB068? That is of little use to me. It's this ID here, this C016 that I really want. And the reason that's important is that this ID here is how I'm going to refer to the channel in messages. If I look at the messages list, each of those messages refers to its channel. Well, how about that? I am mistaken. It looks like here the channel is referred to by name within the message, so I was mistaken. Users, on the other hand, definitely are referred to like by these user ID. So perhaps it doesn't matter quite so much if the ID that's showing up here is the MongoDB ID. Nevertheless, it's something I'd like to take at least a quick look at. So let's go ahead and take a look over in our channels document. Let's see, that is going to be in the back end under documents. So if you look at the channel document, I have private string ID, and I think I know. Interesting. We have these sort of a clash between, on the one hand, in the channels, we have this ID, we have this underscore ID, and the underscore ID is taking precedence over the ID. It might be that we've got to do something special here to distinguish between the underscore ID and the ID. One thing we could try is to actually have two separate fields, one for underscore ID and one for ID. And let's see what happens. Now we will have to regenerate all of these. That's something that's slightly annoying when you use the Sohib code generators, that you have to regenerate these. And now we have to also come back and find all these fluent setters and get rid of those again. And if we had already redone the equals method, we'd have to redo that as well. But let's see what happens now. Let's see if we get both IDs. So with that change, we will need to rerun the back end. So the back end, you'd have to restart. I don't think you get hot reloading with the back end the way you do with the front end. We'll see if that makes any difference. So let's go back to localhost 3000, and we will log out and log back in again. Now, here's something interesting. With that change, I no longer see the admin menu, and it's probably because, my back end broke. So let's see, what did I do to break the back end here? Okay, it is saying a whole lot of things. What is the problem? Could not safely identify store assignment for repository candidate channel repository. Okay, so it did not like when I did that ID, change that ID thing on the channel repository. It did not like that at all. Let's see if changing that back fixes it. If I just hit my undo a few times, and let's try that again. We may have to do something different in order to make that work. Now, one thing we could do is we are loading this MongoDB repository with a Python script from a zip archive. We could do some manual renaming. We could just rename that ID field so that it has a different value. That would be one sort of quick and dirty way to get around this. Looks like this is now coming back up again. And now I have my channels back, my list of channels. And there it is. So I'm not able to get that other ID field. That's something we will have to work on if we need it. In this case, I think we probably can get away without it, because we can get the messages by their by the name of the channel. We don't need the internal Slack ID of the channel. Still slightly annoying, but we'll get around it. One thing we can do also at this point is maybe, since we don't need this ID, we can probably eliminate it from our display. So if we come to the let's see, the channel table, we can just take that ID field out, and maybe there's another field that we might want to put in place of it that might be more useful. Let's see what else we know about a channel. If we go back to our channel, let's see, that was under the channel document. We can see all the things we know about channel down here. So the name, the created, we could see the creator, although the creator is going to be basically one of these numbers here. We can see the topic. Let's maybe go with the topic and the purpose. So that is going to be topic.value, purpose.value. Let's see whether, if we go back to our channel table, if we say data field is purpose.value, and here we'll just say purpose. The text here is the oh yeah, that's already we're already seeing that. So you can see that name. This is the what goes at the top of the column header. So if I do foo, you can see that this will now show up as purpose foo, but that's silly, so I'll take that out. Whereas the data field is actually the name of the variable. Actually, we normally indent that like so. Let's make another one of these for the purpose. It was purpose and topic. So we'll do topic.value and we'll do topic. All right. And now you can see we've got name, purpose, and topic, and we've got our channel list, and there it is. Now there is some little problem down here where there's some stuff here at the bottom that we're not able to see because this nav is in the way, and I guess the scrolling isn't working exactly as it should. So that's something we're going to need to, a little visual glitch we're going to need to work on. But we now have basically, I think, all of the elements of our, if we go back to our issue, which is where we started, all the elements of our story, I think, are there. The menu item does go to the list of channels. The backend routes are in place. We're displaying the real channels. We've got a channel repository, a channel document, and a channel controller. And what's left is the testing. So let's come over here and first do maven test -d skip npm. That will make sure that at least the current tests still pass. And we'll do something similar over in the front end. We will come in here and do npm test and make sure that all the current tests are passing. I suspect that the current tests will still pass, but what we will not have is test coverage. Okay, so first it only renders the tests on things that we changed, but then we can press the A to run all tests. Over here in the back end, we're fine, but if we add maven test jacoco report, and let's also switch to the front end. Sorry, front end. There we go. Front end is this window. You can see all our tests pass, but if we now do npm run coverage, I think what we're going to find is that we've probably got some gaps in coverage because we wrote a whole bunch of new JavaScript code and we have not written tests for it. So let's see. Indeed, you can see that the red shows up in exactly the places we would expect. Channels, channel table, and channels, channel list. Those are the new React components we wrote, and they have 0 coverage in some of the categories here. So we will have to address that. If you want to see the details, then you can open up in a web browser. And on Mac, it's very convenient. You can just do open. On other systems, you would need to actually dig down in the Finder and double-click on the file. But I can do open. Let's see. I believe it is coverage. And then lcov index.html. Is that right? lcov report index.html. And you can see the detail. So if I go under channels, channel list, it shows exactly the lines of code that aren't covered. Also, I need to get those those comments out of that channel list file. So we will take care of that. But that basically, this is where you can see exactly where the coverage gaps are. And similarly, over here in the back end, if I do open target site Jacoco index.html, this shows me where the coverage gaps are. And as you would suspect, it's in the channels controller. Then also under the documents. So some tests we need to write. I'm going to write those tests in a separate video just to keep the videos sort of tidy. We will finish this off by doing a get status. Let's see, if I do a get diff, I can quickly check and see what are the things that I might need to fix up before I do my commit. And I see this commented out code. So if I do a search in VS Code on that, I'm pretty sure I know where it is, but this will help me identify it very quickly. Let's get rid of those commented lines of temporary code. All right, so that looks pretty good. I can get rid of this blank line up here, tidy that up a bit. Come back and do a get diff again. If you've already done a get add dot, then you can do a get diff minus stage. And it will show you the same thing. In this case, however, it's showing you what you've already added into the green. And I'm just sort of looking through for anything that looks like something that shouldn't go in the commit. Everything there looks fine. So if I do a get status, those are the things I'm going to commit. I'm going to get commit minus MPC, my initials, and then I'm going to say, let's see, this is working on, let's go with just story. And if I go to the back to the issue, not this one, but I believe this one. So it's issue number 11. Let's say issue number 11. That will make that be a link in my commit message. And let me say this, for issue 11. So that's the why of what I'm doing. Add list of channels, list of Slack channels. And that's my sort of my top level heading. If I don't put the close quote, make a blank line, and then I can make a list of what I did. I added front end component for a page and a table for channels. Added back end document, repository, and controller for channels. All right, and then I can do a get push. First I'll do a get status to know what my branch name is. Get push origin staff channel list. And if I do -u, that does what's called setting the upstream. From here on out, I can just do get push, and it will automatically go to origin staff channel list. You can see branch chaff channel list set up to track the remote branch from origin. And if I do a get status, there we go. We're up to date. All right, so that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and if you have questions, feel free to post those on the Slack channel for the course.